Two boys, two orphan boys, trapped in desolate neighborhoods and towns, struggling against their fears of the unknown and of being alone, and haunted at every turn by hints and personifications of death itself. In the Phantasm series, young Michael exists in a surreal world, in dreams within dreams, where unbearable truths echo behind an ever-shifting reality. In Home Alone, there is strong suggestion that all is not as it seems for young Kevin, the boy who is alone at home, that he too is enveloped by a persistent phantasm, cloaking the very same existential horrors. Both of these boys live inside false realities. The entirety of Phantasm's plot is Mike's hallucinatory nightmare, where a mundane but paranoiac world exists in parallel with a stark, hellish landscape, the two connected via harmonic, ethereal gateway. He awakens in the denouement to a new scene wherein Ice Cream Man Reggie must help him to distinguish between reality and his dreams. A scene that itself is revealed to be yet another dream or delusion at the beginning of the sequel. Narration and voiceovers alternate betwixt Mike and two other characters in Phantasm 2, and psychic links between characters suggest the possibility that all of them exist within a single mind. In Phantasm Oblivion, Mike remembers alternate scenes that were deleted from the first movie, and the movie ends enigmatically with the characters reverting to an alternate past, predating the events of the original. Notably, in the first movie, Mike visits a fortune teller and her granddaughter, who inform him that all of his fears and troubles are entirely within his own mind. The false reality is far less explicit in Home Alone, yet it remains unmistakable to the discerning eye. Characters watch It's a Wonderful Life, a film famously about alternate realities. Yes. Twice, Kevin unambiguously hallucinates in the basement. He shares a psychic link with his mother, throwing her independent existence into doubt. Throughout the movie, characters blatantly exhibit impossible feats. Here, I do not merely refer to comedic liberties such as the Wet Bandit's cartoonish indestructibility. Kevin sleds down a staircase and out of the front door along an inconceivable trajectory. Buzz consumes an entire cheese pizza in under 10 seconds. Absurd. Kevin orders pizza delivered to the house, while the phone line at this very same house is out of commission. With no pressing motivation, and in only a couple hours at most, Kevin cleans up the outlandish aftermath from his battle with the wet bandits, including broken glass, toy cars, feathers, tar caked all over the basement steps, treacherous ice frozen all over the front steps of the house, while somehow he manages to overlook Harry's single golden tooth and all of the destruction in Buzz's bedroom. After rescuing Kevin from the wet bandits, Old Man Marley returns him to his house, in plain view of all of the traps, without realizing or caring that he, a young boy, is there all alone. Speaking of this old man, this Marley, he has a nasty puncture wound piercing all the way through his hand that miraculously heals overnight, so as to be gone without a trace during the film's dreamlike ending. And lest we forget, in a parallel scene to the fortune tellers of Phantasm, Kevin visits a Santa Claus and his elf, his own conception of an oracle, to whom he betrays his willingness to indulge in the comforts of self-deception, feigning a belief in the magical toy maker Kris Kringle.
The funeral is about to begin, sir.
And forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Both universes are obsessed with dead or missing families. Mike's parents are recently deceased, so he naturally clings to his older brother, Jody, who soon enough is revealed to also be dead. Mike's grief and fear of being alone are the motivating themes of Phantasm, one might say. Reggie, who is now Mike's legal guardian, loses his never-seen wife and daughter in a sudden explosion at the beginning of Phantasm 2. Liz, already orphaned, loses her remaining family. Her grandparents are taken by the tall man, and her only sister abandons her in favor of her husband and children. In Phantasm 3, Tim, a marked Kevin McCallister parody, sees both of his parents killed and then lives alone in a macabre house, fortified against intruders with booby traps and dummy decoys.
Look what you did, you little jerk.
Kevin is obviously abandoned by his family in Home Alone, and again in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Gus Polinski and his polka bum compatriots, the Kenosha Kickers, each have their own abandoned family. Old Man Marley has murdered his whole family, infamously turning their bodies into mummies, or he is simply estranged from them, depending on whom you trust. Both boys are surrounded by premonitions of death. The tall man's diminutive undead ghouls constantly lurk in the peripheral vision of Mike and his friends, and haunt their very dreams. Liz foresees both of her grandparents' deaths. Mike again envisions the corpse of the hitchhiker. Alchemy, I believe her name was. before he ever meets her in the flesh. That particular episode evokes the many urban legends of ghostly hitchhikers, entreating unsuspecting motorists for passage through the cold night. In Home Alone, Kevin's mother is herself this hitchhiker, accepting a ride from Gus Polinski. But here, Gus is conflated with the devil himself, or at a minimum, a deathly omen. Significantly, in the scene immediately following the film's climax, Gus relates the story of leaving his young son at a funeral parlor all day long, alone with a corpse, traumatizing him and rendering him speechless for many weeks. This, if you'll permit me, is unthinkable, and it certainly cannot be taken at face value. It is precisely the type of story a ghost would tell itself to rationalize the behavior of its bereaved survivors. That child's family is dead, we must surely conclude. And Kevin McCallister's family is dead as well. The gaunt specter of Old Man Marley looms in accusatory silence, symbolizing the guilt Kevin feels over his dead loved ones. Old Man Marley, the family murderer who preserved their corpses as mummies, as gruesome mementos. Kevin is imprisoned in his home by this ghastly apparition, imprisoned in his mind by his unresolved feelings of fear and guilt and grief, and when the truth gets too close, Kevin screams, a scream of primal horror.
Do you hear me? I'm not afraid anymore!
These boys we have been discussing are no boys at all. These are men living in carefully crafted delusions, unable to grow and unable to manage their grief for their long-dead families. Just look at their behaviors for a moment. Mike drives and repairs the car, the 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. He drinks beer, Mexican beer. He uses guns. The tall man insistently refers to Mike only as boy. Even in the sequels, when Mike is very much an adult man. His youth is, you see, not literal, but rather a metaphor for his emotional and psychological vulnerability. As man of the house, the precocious Kevin wears a robe and sleeps in the master bedroom. He evidences no other bedroom of his own. He goes grocery shopping alone, unthinkable for a boy of his postulated age. And conspicuously he selects regular milk in lieu of the readily available chocolate variety. He outright declares that when he grows up he will be living alone, precisely as he does for the duration of the film. Twice Kevin applies aftershave, and twice he screams. Why does this young boy scream so? He is not shaved, he has no abrasions. It is not a scream of pain. No, it is that same scream of horror with which he wails at the sight of Old Man Marley, that shadow of an unutterable truth. And here it erupts from Kevin as he beholds himself in a mirror, mimicking the morning ritual of a grown man and wandering too near the dreaded truth. This interpretation of mirrors as revelators of shunned realities lends itself apropos to the final shock of Phantasm, wherein Mike is visited by the tall man, outside of his nightmares this time, and is dragged screaming through the mirror on his closet door. It could mean that, as he is pulled through this mirror, Mike is forced to confront the awful truth he has been denying. Or it could mean the opposite, that he is dragged again into the darkness of his delusions, shattering any hope of accepting the truth of his life. It is, I think, deliberately ambiguous on the part of the filmmakers.
How may I help you?
Is this toothbrush approved by the American Dental Association?
I don't know. It doesn't say, honey.
Can you please find out?
Herb! I've got a question here about a toothbrush. No, is this toothbrush approved by the American Dental
Boy. You play a good game, boy. But the game is finished. Now you die.
Haunted by his grief and fear, and Old Man Marley, with his garbage can full of mummies, Kevin ultimately seeks solace from Santa Claus and from organized religion, and he is able to concoct an alternative history for the grim old man, and thereby to fend off the encroaching darkness, now identified with the wet bandits who threaten to ransack his home, his sanctum. The victory is fleeting, however, as it is immediately undercut by Gus Polinski's tale about his child, surrounded by death, this child, traumatized and abandoned. He could very well be describing Mike here. Death-obsessed Mike, tormented by ghouls, skulking through cemeteries and mortuaries and hiding inside of caskets. Gus Polinski, the polka king of the Midwest, is telling us that the happy reunions that follow can only be imaginary wish fulfillment. Kevin and Old Man Marley might have fresh fantasies of loving families with whom to spend Christmas, but those families, too, will die. They always do.
I'm up here, you morons! Come and get me! You guys give up, or you're thirsty for more?